Shalom, shalom, shalom. Grace and peace. Greetings. My name is Ezra ben Khazar, and welcome to this channel where we dig deep into Khazarian history, genetics, and their Judaism and their other cultural heritage. Today, I would like to go deeper into their DNA. We already did a video on the Khazarian DNA, and we looked at some of their burial practices, some of the haplogroups that were found. We seen that there were two Khazars who were found to be haplogroup R1a-z280. Today, we're going to look into the specific subclades of those two Khazars and to see if they're related to the Persian slash Indo-Iranian slash possibly Mitanni lineage of the Ashkenazi Levites. So we'll go into that deeper later. But this video is a deeper look at the Khazars and how many people view them as being heavily admixed with East Asian ancestry. Today, I want to look and show that perhaps what it is that they're majorly mixed with Siberian ancestry. We're also going to show R1a-z280 and possible Khazarian R1a-z280s and look at their genetics and their genome. So let's dive into it. Let's get deep. So first, I want to talk about R1a-z280 and that in relation to gene flow, or being evidence of gene flow between what we would call Balto Slavs, or since Slavs weren't really a people group per se until about 600 AD, what we would call like the early Slavs. So Balto early Slavs, Turkic people, and the Finno-Ugric people. Let's look at how these groups have been neighbors for thousands of years, since the beginning of time, really. Since what we would look at as the time of Japheth. But they've been neighbors for thousands of years, and their ancestral origins, the origins of Balts, early Slavs, Turks, and Finno-Ugrics, are mixed. And the R1a-1a branch is the Indo-Aryan, quote-unquote, Indo-Aryan branch. Because of the mixing of these three groups, it's hard to determine exactly where and if R1a-z280 came primarily from one group or another. But what we do know is that the migration of the R1a-z280 starts in the ware culture, going upwards into the corded ware culture. The corded ware culture is very, very significant in this video because many groups after this culture will get their ancestry from these groups of peoples. And I believe the corded ware culture is where R1a-z280 may have been born. The earliest samples that we can find are in the areas of Germany, Poland, and then many Baltic areas, Latvia, Estonia. Later on, we'll see the migration to the east. Let's follow this migration. We see from the corded ware culture, an eastern branch of the corded ware culture would appear called the Fayanovo culture. In this culture, we will talk about later in relation to the Finno-Ugric peoples. From the Fayanovo culture, we have the Abashevro culture / Sintaja culture. This is the culture of the horse warriors, masters of the domestication of the horse. And the horses of this culture will go on to be the horses of today. These horse warriors will move to the R1a culture, which will grow into the major home of R1a-z280. And in the east of the Shrubnea culture, the Androvenal culture, known for its chariots, where we will have the birth, or maybe not birth, but expansion of the R1a-z280, the brother clade. These would be your Western Eurasians and your Eastern Eurasians. The Shrubnea culture will grow to be the Sarmatians, and the Androvenal culture will grow to be the Scythians. At this time, they were largely what we would call Europeoid, very close genetically to North and Eastern Europeans. A variant of the Androvenal culture is called the Meshovskaya culture. And this culture corresponds to the growth of who we know as the Ugric people, the people who will grow to be the Magyars, the Proto-Magyars. And they bring in the more of a Finno-Ugric element. They used to be settled in West Siberia. Matter of fact, the Khazar culture was known to have Siberian ancestry to begin with, showing early on that the Siberian ancestry is key to Turkic ancestry and Khazar ancestry as well. This is very interesting to see. With the gene flow between Balto, early Slavs, Proto-Slavs, Turks, and Finno-Ugric people, by examining R1a-z280, that it spans more than 1 to 2 language families. It's in Indo-European families, and is in so-called the Ural-Altaic convergence zone. It spans all of this land, even up into the Mongol and Chinese areas. So in this next section, after we talked about the gene flow, I want to look at the admixtures of these different groups and DNA tests to show what the Khazars would have been like, or the populations that would make up the Khazars. So first, let's start with the Yamnaya culture people. As we look at their genetics and of different ancient samples in different areas of the Yamnaya culture, east and west and southern, we see that they were a mixture of Eastern hunter-gatherers who we know also had Siberian ancestry as well, and Caucasus hunter-gatherers, which is where they would have got their light skin. And then they also have some Anatolia Neolithic within them from the pre-pottery culture. Just a little bit of that. Very interesting to see. The corded ware culture, they were mostly northern and eastern hunter-gatherers, and that Siberian Central Asian ancestry that I was talking about would have been similar to a group that we call the Nagasan people. The Nagasan people. They also had a little bit of European and Anatolian farmers. So after that, as we was looking at the migrations, let's go over into the Sintaja and the Shrubnea culture, which we know the Shrubnea culture was a hotbed of R1a-z280. It was a mix of steppe pastoralists, which would have been your Yamnaya ancestry, with a little bit more of the Anatolia Neolithic, so a little bit more of that pre-pottery, with some Western hunter-gatherer. Very interesting to see, but it's a direct continuation of the corded ware people. The Yamnaya had half of their ancestry from the Caucasus hunter-gatherers and Eastern hunter-gatherers, the corded ware culture people. What's interesting to notice is that in this PCA plot, we see that people of the Androvenal, Sintaja, and Shrubnea cultures are genetically close to Northern and Eastern Europeans during that time. Very interesting to note. These people will become your West Eurasians, or you can call them your forest and Western steppe people, occupying the Western steppe and the forest steppe. One interesting culture to note of this people that we've spoken about in the Hungarian video is the Meshovskaya culture. In 2015, a genetic study of the ancient dwellings of the Meshovskaya culture was made of people found at the Kapova cave. 3 individuals of Meshovskaya and southern Urals from 1400 BC to 1000 BC were studied. Extractions of Y DNA from one individual was determined to belong to the haplogroup R1a-1a1, with the SNPs going all the way to Z280 CTS1211 and its subclades, while the other extractions was determined to belong to R1b, R1b-1a2, which historians had thought were the result of migrations of early Indo-Europeans from the Black Sea to Siberia and Middle Asia via the Urals. And here we have the admixture analysis. And as we see here, the heavy Siberian ancestry in the Khazarian people, and then the European hunter-gatherer ancestry being half to a majority, especially in the Finno-Ugric people at the top. And then you have the Caucasus hunter-gatherer ancestry within them. Very interesting to note. And I want you to note the Khazarian culture as well. For this is the culture that would grow to be the closest to the Khazars that we have found and studied. And as you see, they have the most Siberian ancestry. They were also one of the further east of the Scythian cultures, because all of these cultures that we're looking at here will form what we call the Scythio-Siberian world. The world also of the Finno-Scythians, as we see coming in, also known as the Euro-Altaic conversion zone, the home of the early Magyars, the home of the early Proto-Slavic people who will go back west, who I believe Herodotus called the Scythian farmers. Fair use. By the way, for all the information I use, we're just sharing information for the knowledge of the people. All people should grow. But if you want to get the full context of what I'm going into, I suggest that you buy these books or buy the studies that you need to buy. Or most of these studies is free. Just go look it up. But let's continue. These people would go into the Xiongnu Federation, as we see here. Let's look closely here. So you had the steppe influence, that would be your Srebnaya culture influence. You have your Altaic influence, that's like your Khazarian culture, your Scythians. I believe the steppe would have been majority R1a-z280, but your Altaic would have been more of the Z93, but they were mixed within each other. You have your Kosgo, your northern cultures, your like N groups and C groups, and then you have your slab grade related. These is like your early proto-Mongoloid people, your Q groups, your C groups and such. All of these people will mix and grow and form together to make the Xiongnu people. Your Uic culture, which is a Proto-Turkic culture. Your Sarmatians, who we talked about, that's your Shrubnaya related. The BMAC related culture, that's like your Iranian as well. Some Levant going in there as well, possibly. Your Han related, that's that Chinese related. And then the Slav grave culture as well, the Proto-Mongol culture. As I said, as you see, the Uric culture will grow into be a Proto-Turkic culture, and that's from the Scythio-Siberian world. Over here in their admixture, we see that the Slav grave culture is mostly ancient North Asian, which is a mixture, I believe, of East Asian and Siberian ancestry, I believe. That's what your green is. But over to the western areas, you have where you have your Scythian people, you have a mixture of time they become the Huns, the Xiongnu. You see they're heavily mixed with all of these cultures. The pink would be your Scythian. Your brown is Sarmatian. And then you have the BMAC culture coming in there. This is where you start getting your East Asian mixture. You see the little bit of the Han Chinese in there. And then you see when they become Turks, their mixture. And then you see when they become Mongols, their mixture. One thing to note is the high East Asia in Mongols. This is why people think that the Khazars were East Asian, but they were more so Siberian in this next section. Now we will take a closer look at the DNA of Khazarian people. Now we have a clearer understanding of the cultures that make up not only the Khazars, but the Scythians, the Sarmatians, the Turks, and the Mongols. And we see that there's Siberian and steppe ancestry. If we go to this forum where people that are very into genetics go to discuss things, you'll see here that they were talking about, they were having a discussion about the paper that dropped about Khazarian ancestry called Diverse Genetic Origins of Medieval Steppe Nomad Conquerors. We went into this same paper in our first video. Shout out to the brothers in this discussion. But in this video, you have a brother who I believe is a Jewish brother as well. So shout out to him, a gay man, who was talking about the fact that the Khazars, as we even see in this depiction right here, have a lot of Khazaric Iron Age ancestry. That's where they get a lot of their ancestry from. That's probably why the two Khazars that were found had R1a-z280. But we also see that they are Turkic, as we see what makes up the Proto-Turks. And we see that they're heavily Siberian, which is all making sense. It's all coming together now. They are mostly Siberian related, just like Finno-Ugric people have Siberian ancestry coming from West Siberia. Perhaps this is why we read that the Khazars had a language like the Turks, but also similar to its own, perhaps close to Finno-Ugric, or perhaps that's why the Chuvash people speak their own Turkic. But let's continue. The Khazaric samples that were close to Khazars are the Khazaric Iron Age samples. We have one from a later Iron Age time, and then we have one from an early Iron Age time that were studied by the people on this forum. The top three closest populations to the late Iron Age Khazaric was the Tubalor, which is in a Siberio-Mongol group. You have the Shor people, which is a Turkic, Finno-Ugrian, Siberian group. And then you have the Khazars, which is also a Turkic, Finno-Ugric, Siberian group. Very interesting to see. Here's the whole list, but an honorable mention is the Nogay people, as we see and as we have studied, have a high R1a-z280 in certain tribes of the Nogay people who go back to Sarmatians, which is putting more emphasis on our theory that the Judeo-Turkic culture became Sarmatians. In the early Iron Age sample that someone else did, the top three tribes were the Bashkirs, the Turkic tribes of Central Asia and Southern Siberia. Very interesting. We talked about the Bashkirs. We also had the Udmurt people, who are a Permian Finnic group. So that's Finno-Ugric. And then we had the Basermen people, who are also a Permian Finno-Ugric / Turkic people. Very interesting to see. And then we see an honorable mention here is the Chuvash. Now I want to take you to the supplementary information for the same paper, Diverse Genetic Origins. Here we see that there were 9 skeletons found in southern Russia. And they have MT DNA found. And then they also have Y DNA that was found. But the two, I believe the two that was found were able to be those R1a. I believe 2 that were found in this paper are also the R1a-z93 samples. And we're going to look at those subclades. So first, we have descriptions of the samples and how they were buried. Right here, we have a graph of their skull morphology and other descriptions. their bone, what bone was taken, the age of their death, what century they lived, how they looked. Here we see that they're almost equally mixed, Mongoloid looking and Caucasoid looking. Very interesting. So now we go down to the mtDNA. These are the mtDNAs of those Khazars that were found. Interesting enough, I didn't talk about this in my last video, but haplogroup X2E is actually found in Ashkenazi Jews. We'll go back to Maternal Lineages of Ashkenazi Jews by Kevin Allen Brooke on page 124, where we see that X2E to A is actually in Ashkenazi Jews. It's uncommon, but at least one Ashkenazi that has this has a documented matriline from the Ukraine. Could this be a possible Khazar ancestry? So it's something to think about. It also matches people in Czechia and Georgia, as well as in West Asia. But there are also people in the Levant that have it as well, such as the Druze. So could this have been an ancient Israelite lineage that went into Khazars? That's another theory that we have to consider and look into. But we also see that the Tubular have it as well. A people group that we saw was close to the ancient Khazars in Siberia, in the Baikal region, matching the Siberian ancestry. It's also found in Libyan Jews and Tunisian Jews, which we will talk about those North African Jews at the end of the video, because they do have some interesting Khazarian haplogroups, some of them. When we look at the Y chromosome analysis, they were able to find Q in 4 of the samples. That was one of those Siberian haplogroups in the Proto-Turks. The R1a, they found that in 2 samples, which is that Indo-European Scythian Sarmatian lineage. And then they found the C lineage, which is that Proto-Mongol lineage as well. These lineages would become Turkic lineage and the Xiongnu. The rest of the samples, they didn't have enough to dig into, but they did confirm the haplogroups for the R1a. And I believe it's these 2 samples that they did the other paper on. Let's examine those haplogroups now. One was R1a Y57, which we see in ancient Hungarian samples, possibly Hungarian conqueror. We would have to compare it with the other paper, but I think it is a Hungarian conqueror. Seeing that the Khazars did, in fact, go into the Magyars. We see it in Germany. We see it in Russia. We see it still in Mongolia. And we see a Karache-Balkar people that has it as well. This is definitely a Khazarian lineage. It's even in a couple of Chinese people as well, and Tartars. And the other one was quite unrelated, as the first Khazar lineage was more of a Western lineage. This one is more of an Eastern lineage. R1a-z280, and it's RY9, which is found in Iran, India, Sri Lanka, and also in the Middle East, in Pakistan. Very, very interesting to see. It's in Uyghur people as well. Very fascinating. As we know, the Uyghurs are one of the sons of Togomar as well. Shout out to the Uyghurs. Next, we examine an actual admixture test on those Khazar bodies. And we see that they vary in European and Asian ancestry. That's what set them apart. Some have more Northeast Asian ancestry and some have less Northeast Asian ancestry. Like right here, for example, Khazar 1251, Khazar 1251, he has Mediterranean ancestry. He also has Southwest Asian ancestry. He has Native American ancestry. That's that Siberian. And then he has Northern European ancestry as well, which makes sense from his steppe ancestry. He's very close to an early Sarmatian, as we see. Very close. The Sarmatian has a little bit more of the Southeast Asian within them. And they're both close to the steppe. So we see how all these people connect. and how they're very close genetically. We have Khazar 1564, who's very close to a Bronze Age Hungarian population. He has a little bit of Northeast Asian in him, but he's mostly Mediterranean. Very fascinating. Khazar 166 is mostly Northeast Asian, with a little bit of Southwest Asian in them. And then from there, they grow and vary in Southeast Asian and Northern European ancestry. And then last, we have a Khazar who's close to a Caucasus hunter-gatherer. Next, we have a summary of their results and their nearest populations. Each sample's nearest population. For example, Khazar 1251 is close to a modern-day Tajik genetically. And genetically close to a steppe person from the like a R1a culture person. But then we have a lot that are close to Khazarian and then we have a Sarmatian as well. Their nearest populations are Siberian groups and Turkic groups, Finno-Ugric. Here's some of the other graphs. You can look through these. Here we have the clustering of the ancient samples. One thing that I find very interesting in this cluster is that while most Khazars do cluster together over here, close to the Sarmatians as well and to the steppe people, there are some Khazars over on the other side that match close to a Natufian. There's a Khazar that matches very close to Natufians. Could he be a more Israelite-influenced Khazar? And then there's a Khazar close to Khazarian and Hungarian, as we showed earlier. Well, now I will talk about what we might have found, quite possibly R1a-z280 Khazars. We have these samples called the 3 Anapa samples, and they're within the paper of the whole genome of the whole genome analysis shed light on the genetic origins of Huns, Avars, and conquering Hungarians. See, in this paper, they took 3 Anapa samples, which is an area in the Caucasus region by the Kuban River near Crimea. And this area is in the heartland of the Khazar Empire. This is actually the time of the Khazar Empire as well, encompassing the 9th to 10th century. Now, when we go into the supplementary information, we have more information on these Khazars that were Z280. One could trace his lineage to the R1a lineage R-CTS-1211, which we talked about earlier, were in the R1a culture and also in the Finno-Ugric culture, the proto-Finno-Ugric culture, showing that the Khazars were Turkic, Finno-Ugric, Sarmatian, Scythian people. It's very complicated how these people groups came together. A fascinating thing is that you can see this lineage in ancient Vikings. And when I get a chance, I will make a video on the Vikings. And this lineage is also in Crimean Tartar as well. The other sample is a deeper branch in the R-CTS-1211, RYP-419, which is found in Latvia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Germany. Both of these are part of the R1a culture, found in Magyars, found in Vikings. The last one had no Y DNA, was an empty DNA, and it was empty U5A2. Back in one of our sources, in Kevin Allen Brooks' book, page 109, we read that U5A2, a further subclade of it, but U5A2 is found in Ashkenazi Jews. It's not very common in Ashkenazi Jews, but it's in Ashkenazic lines from Romania and Ukraine and Belarus. In the book, he also notes that it's found in Central Asia and ancient Scythians, and that it could be a Polish convert. But could this Polish person have Khazarian ancestry? Seems like he might. Polish people also carry R1a-z280, as we see the Khazars and Polish both go back to Sarmatians. And then the other 2 Khazars shared mtDNA in J1c. back in our book, if you read pages 61 to 68, you'll read various J1C lineages and Ashkenazi Jews. J1C, C1626-1T, has carriers all across Europe and the Middle East, ranging from modern Bulgarians to Assyrians, from ancient people in Sicily to Germany. In the supplementary information, we also get to see DNA tests of these Anapa samples. Here we see that they're very close and very steppe influenced. They have the middle late Bronze Age Armenia within them, which is very influenced by the Shrubnaya culture. Armenia in the Middle Bronze Age was very influenced by the steppe peoples, and their majority, their DNA comes from that, up to 90%. And then the rest of it is what they would call Hunnic ancestry or Turkic ancestry, which would be mixed. As we see, the Sarmatians and Scythians were a people group before the Huns. Over here, we see as well their Armenia heritage, as well as their Paziric Hunnic heritage, Sarmatian heritage. They match very close to these Huns and Sarmatians. And as we see down here, they are 100% Saltovo-Mayaki. We will make a shorter next video will be on the Saltovo-Mayaki, but as we see here, that is the Khazar culture, and they are 100% Khazar culture. Very interesting. Over here, we see that they are half Alan and Sarmatian mix, or Alan and Xiongnu mix, seeing that some of the Khazars have Alan ancestry. All right, and last but not least, to close out all of this information, I want to show you this group post of this person who was trying to figure out why he was an Algerian Jew with R1a-z280. He gave off his 23andMe results, where he was mostly North African and West Asian with a little bit of Italian and broadly European, which is what we should see from like an Ashkenazic Jew or a Sephardic Jew. He said his family line was from a line of rabbis going back to the 17th century. So he was surprised to have this R1a haplogroup. This is a subclade over here in Belarus and Russia and Lithuania. The people on the website figured he could be possibly a Vandal descendant, but we know that the Vandals also had some Alans among them. Perhaps he's an Alan convert, an Alan Khazarian convert to Judaism. But these are things that we have to continue doing research on, and we will do more research on the Saltovo-Mayaki culture. I think I gave you guys enough ramblings for today. I pray you enjoyed it, and until next time, shalom, grace, and peace. Like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into genetics, history, religion, and culture of the Khazars. Shalom.